based on the entrance polling data, the most electable. That seemed to be very, very important to Iowans. And it strikes me that the president recognizes that because his campaign has criticized only Mitt Romney so far. Do they regard him, therefore, as the biggest threat, the most electable?
I think so. I mean, I think the majority of pundits and anyone who's out there right now believes that Romney is probably the most formidable opponent to Obama. And I think the race, between those two candidates would come down to the economy. And that is really, I think, what everyone has their eyes on. And as you said, Obama's campaigning against Romney already, and Romney's actually turned his campaign to Obama, whereas the other candidates are all sort of now focused on Romney. And I mean, I think in the case of Santorum, I think it's a flavor of the week issue. I mean, I think it's the same thing we saw if it were Gingrich. I don't know. If Iowa would happen about 3 weeks ago, I think it would be a very, very different outcome. And right now, it's been sort of who's the non-Romney candidate. I mean, we had 41% of voters coming in undecided into Iowa. And I think what happened is most of the undecideds moved to Santorum as their option, again, as their non-Romney option.
Right.
But Romney stayed very constant, and he has been throughout the entire primary season, and I think we'll probably continue to see the same.
You know, Dick Morris was on our air this morning on Fox News, and, Dee Dee, he made a very interesting observation. He said, look, I recognize that Rick Santorum put a lot of work into Iowa. That's not what won it for him. He was nowhere, 3 weeks ago. He was still in the low single digits. He said what happened is that every other anti-Romney candidate fell by the wayside. They rose and they fell precipitously. And Rick Santorum, according to Dick Morris, was just the last guy standing. That's all.
I kind of think Dick Morris is wrong on that. I really do, because, look, I've got friends in Iowa. They love Rick Santorum because he really was sort of a native son. He earned it. He did it sort of like the movie Hoosiers, like the little team. I mean, he was the little guy, had no money, no resources. He earned it. I mean, Iowa, they rewarded him for that, and the ground game will be the air game every time, especially in Iowa.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Marjorie? I mean, you saw everybody from Michelle Bachmann rise and fall to Rick Perry to Herman Cain to Newt Gingrich. There's nobody left here except for Rick Santorum in terms of the conservative wing of the party, the sort of anti-Romney candidate.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Paul's the only one who didn't have his really 2 seconds of glory, but I don't think he's seen as really a true candidate.
Half of his voters were independents. Ron Paul's were independents.
Right, exactly. He's grabbed onto a very diverse group of followers. I mean, because he's got those that are all about the legalization of drugs and marijuana, the anti-war crowd. So he's got a very eclectic following, but in principle, he isn't consistent with conservative values, and it is not, I think, a valid candidate, an opponent. But I will say, I do think there is a combination of things. I think that Santorum drew social conservatives. He drew the evangelical and Christian votes and Catholic votes in Iowa. He worked really hard for Iowa, but I still do think that he is a case of the last man standing and flavor of the week.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Newt Gingrich. Let's assume he's going to stay in the race because he is, as some commentators have said, angry about what happened to him at the hands of the pro-Romney super PAC that mocked and ridiculed and demeaned him with all of these negative ads in Iowa and basically cut his support in half. He went from the front runner to 4th place. 13%, I think, was his final tally. If he stays in the race, Dee Dee, is that good news for Mitt Romney because he sucks away votes from Santorum? In other words, Santorum and Gingrich kind of split that vote, that anti-Romney vote.
Well, here's the thing. Romney won Iowa, and nobody thought that the moderate Mitt was going to win, but, he did. Good for him. That was a huge win for him, and the reason for that, the reason it's significant is because he's going to win New Hampshire. I mean, no one is going to beat Mitt Romney in New Hampshire. So he will be the only candidate who is not an incumbent to do that. I mean, he's going to make history. Sure. And that's huge going into South Carolina. So you're right that Newt, and him being so grumpy and so mean, which he was last night, and he basically was saying, hey, Mitt, I'm warning you. I'm coming after you. Oh, that resonates. Really, I mean, it's he
terribly gracious in your judgment?
Not at all. And I think he was really a very bad sport. And here's the thing. It wasn't the negative ads, it's the fact that he didn't respond to them, which was a ridiculous strategy, very flawed. Not only that, he didn't lift a finger in Iowa. What did he do? He didn't walk any precincts.
You telling me he was lazy politically?
Yes. Very lazy, didn't do the work, and he didn't understand Iowa, and he's just a bad candidate.
Do you think he was just thinking, look, I can go in there and based purely on popularity, forget organization,
he's
forget
so
money,
popular.
I can win based on popularity.
Yeah, in his own mind, he's that pompous. That's the problem. He thinks he can go and waltz into these debates, do a good job, and he is clever at the debates. But again, especially in Iowa, you got to have a ground game. You got to do the actual work, and he didn't. I mean, he was back in Virginia at the French horn concert and signing books when he should have been in Iowa. So you know what? Sorry about his luck. It wasn't Mitt Romney's fault. It was his own fault.
Is there? I mean, do you agree with that, Marjorie? That Newt Gingrich has had a bad campaign strategy and may be born of laziness, is Dee Dee's point?
Well, I think the Gingrich that everybody was afraid was going to come out has come out. And things have got a little bit heated. I know, and he's throwing this temper tantrum now and acting like, he's giving fodder to all the communities. I know,
He has a history of that, though, doesn't he?
He does, and he turns red in the face, and he's got, and the comedians call him the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he's sitting there with these red cheeks, all frustrated over what's happening, and the gracious, funny Newt and the charisma that was getting him somewhere before has completely gone out the window. I mean, you don't go out and call someone a liar. He called Mitt Romney,
unbelievable,
a liar right before the Iowa caucus, and that's just not playing nice. And so this is where I think things are going to start getting dirty. Gingrich's campaign strategy has now shifted to where he is going to start coming out with the anti and the negative campaigning.
But Newt Gingrich said a week ago, my campaign will remain positive. Period.
He's a liar.
It's already started. He put an article in the New Hampshire paper this morning, a full-paged ad that was negative campaigning against Romney. I mean, that's not true. And talk about the kettle calling the pot black as he's calling Romney a liar. He's already gone out and completely flip-flopped on what he was saying he was going to do. But I mean, I will say I think that a lot of the negative campaigning that's going to start against Romney, it's all going to be focused on Romney, actually might benefit Santorum. Because no one ever looks good. When the negative ads start, it makes Romney look bad, it makes those who are coming after him look bad, and depending on how Santorum runs his campaign, there could be an opportunity for him there to sort of be the shining star.
Yeah. I want to ask you about all the negative attack ads on Newt Gingrich, which really had, I think even he admits now, had a devastating impact on his candidacy. Charles Krauthammer, conservative columnist, Fox News contributor, made an interesting observation. He said you can call them negative attack ads, but he said Newt Gingrich has such a long and distinguished and prolific history of a negative record. Newt has a long negative record, so if you just tell the truth about it, it's an effective negative ad.
Well, it's one thing when someone calls you a dirty, rotten scoundrel, but if the things back up the fact you're a dirty, rotten scoundrel, then you are a dirty, rotten scoundrel. That's the problem. I mean, the facts are there. And the folks that know Newt aren't supporting him. That says something.
Yeah.
And now that Kane's off the scene, he doesn't have anybody who can sort of take the heat for sort of the down and dirty issues.
But look, Romney has got to be, Marjorie, hoping that in a way that both Santorum and Gingrich stay in the race for a while, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's gonna make it a good race for him to have the energy and the heat being deflected to both Gingrich and Santorum. I mean, I think Bachmann, we're going to find out in a few hours sort of where she stands with her race. Perry, I think it'd be best if he packed it up and went to Texas. I'm not for the Texans, but it's probably best for his campaign. But I think it's really going to come down to Santorum, Gingrich. And then, I think Ron Paul's also going to be in it for a while. And I think that actually will benefit Romney as well.
I want to play a soundbite or two now from the Republican candidates. Let's begin with Mitt Romney. And look, not only as you watch this comment from last night by Mitt Romney, look at him in terms of not just the message, but is he presidential? Take a look.
And you are working, and I am working, and we're all working together because of our passion for this country and our concern that it's being led by a president who may be a nice guy, but just is over his head.
He looks presidential, doesn't he, Dee Dee? He looks presidential. He's very intelligent. He's very articulate. That goes a long way in presidential politics, doesn't it?
Well, it definitely goes a long way when we're going to run against Barack Obama, who's maybe the best campaigner we've ever seen in modern time.
Sure.
And he is a great debater. He is a maker. He's a terrible president, but he's a great presidential candidate. You know, when we really can't count him out, they're going to have a ton of money, so we'd better put our best person forward. And I believe that's Mitt Romney. In the last Fox debate, Mitt was fabulous. I mean, he really was presidential. I mean, he went from candidate Romney to President Romney.
But his only mistake, Marjorie, if you can say it, and I think even he would admit it, was, you know, you don't make a $10,000 bet in Iowa where the average income is $40,000, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that was his only mistake, because he's also done a number of interviews, for example, the one he did on Fox with Brett, that was pretty, made him a little bit unlikable. I think it's a likability issues with him. I think you're right. I think Romney is running for president, and the other candidates are running against Romney. And so it's sort of a different campaign right now. And so he's definitely got his sights on how do I beat Obama. And I think he comes across as presidential, but it's the likability issue. And in the end, people vote for those that they like. And
He's
I think
getting
it's that
better, though.
He is. I think he learned from the Brett Baer interview, which, by the way, was a wonderful interview by our colleague Brett Baer here at Fox News. But I think Mitt Romney may have learned from that. I also think he's got an asset in Ann Romney. I was watching her last night, and she was speaking before one of the caucus precincts, and she was just wonderful. She warms him and makes him more endearing. She humanizes Mitt Romney.
Versus the mistress. I mean, you know, he married the mistress. I mean, you think we want that this first lady for Newt? I mean, that's another thing that's not good. I mean, it just is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And Ann is just...
So you think Ann's an asset, don't you, Marjorie?
Absolutely. All the Republican strategists I know have said they should have pulled her out way before Iowa, because she is phenomenal. She's got charisma. She's a family woman. She represents Republican values in all the sense that Mitt is espousing, and I think she is absolutely his best asset, and he needs to get her out there.
Well, not to mention the four handsome sons who were standing behind them
Not
last
a bad-looking family.
That could help with the young vote, the young women's vote anyway. That's
all right, here's Rick Santorum. I want to play a clip from him last night. Here he is.
The message I shared with you tonight is not an Iowa message or an Iowa and South Carolina message. It is a message that will resonate across this land. It will resonate, I know, in New Hampshire, because you think I've been in Iowa a lot. I've been to New Hampshire 30 times and have been more times and done more events than anybody but John Huntsman, and he cheats, he lives there. We will be in New Hampshire. We'll leave tomorrow. We'll spend our time there, and with your help and God's grace, we'll have another fun night a week from now. God bless you.
Marjorie Clifton, Rick Santorum, he's presidential as well, isn't he? Pretty attractive candidate, both in terms of message and presentation.
Yeah, I think he's got the look and the charisma in that sense. I mean, I don't know that he has the track record and the popularity that Romney does in terms of being enough of a candidate against Obama. The other is, you know, Santorum appeals to the uber conservatives, and you know, when it comes down to the actual race, we're going to have all of the undecideds, we're going to have the more centrists, and that's where I think Romney might be a better option for the broader base of Republicans. So the race is not only in states like, you know, South Carolina and in Georgia and in New Hampshire. So it's going to be interesting to see as the primaries go on how Santorum plays out.
Yeah, it's been said, Dee Dee, of Rick Santorum, that he doesn't wear well. In fact, he got trounced in his last senatorial bid by Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. He's been out of politics for a while. And the other criticism of him, he's sort of a one-note Johnny. Everything has to do with family, 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 family.
Good for Iowa, but...
Great for Iowa. I'm not sure that plays elsewhere.
You know, I worked the Iowa caucus and then worked New Hampshire and on for the Governor Bush at the time, and it is a different planet in New Hampshire. And don't think Rick Santorum is going to play well there at all. It's just different. You know, the way to the right-winger, vest-wearing guy from Iowa isn't going to work because they don't even like to pick the Iowa person. It's sort of a rivalry. So, you know, let's give Rick Santorum his moment, but I think this is it.
All right. Marjorie Clifton, thanks very much for being with us. Great to see you.
Sure, thanks. And check out govote.com, because I'm actually the national editor for there, and they've got the dashboard for all the political insights.
GoVote.com. I'm going to check it out.
GoVote.com.
All
Yeah.
right.